The fact that I'm here with my sister Valerie and my youngest son Hunter Biden. Stand up, guys. I'm proud of you.
There's our illustrious president and his illustrious son Hunter in Ireland. You know, it's important to note Joe Biden has yet to visit East Palestine, Ohio, which he said he'd get to at some point. But first, ice cream. While Joe is yucking it up in the motherland, here in the Banana Republic, formerly known as the USA, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg has widened his sights from Donald Trump to include my next guest, Congressman Jim Jordan. Congressman, you're, the hot topic right now. And I want to get into this first because I think a lot of Americans are really confused as to what's going on here, why the DA would now come after you. Is that going to hinder your oversight into this political prosecution?
No, good question, Tomi. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to obstruct our investigation. They allege, we're interfering in a local prosecution. I'm like, no, you're interfering in our investigation, which is part of our constitutional duty to do oversight. After all, Alvin Bragg, think about this. Alvin Bragg used federal funds to indict a former president for no crime. When we want to investigate, when we want to ask questions, he takes us to court. And he takes us to court because we want to talk with the guy who hasn't worked there for over a year and who wrote a book, Mark Pomerantz, who wrote a book solely on this subject about how to get President Trump. And we want to talk to this guy, and they take us to court. So, yeah, they're interfering with our investigation. We want to get the facts and the truth because they use federal funds, and this is the most important election we have. And this is the guy, President Trump, who's leading in every single poll, who's going to be, I think, the Republican nominee, I think going to be our next president, and they're interfering in that federal election. So this is why it's a federal issue, and we want to get some answers. So we're trying to do that. We'll see what happens in court. We have to file our brief on Monday, and then the arguments will be made next Wednesday.
So how do you think this is going to shake out? Do you think that he's going to be able to override your oversight? Is it going to cause complications? Or are you guys going to still be able to do it anyway? Because this obviously puts a little cog in the machine, but are you able to overcome this and pursue this investigation?
We think we will be. It depends on what the judge says. We'll see when what the court has to say about it. But think about this. Supposedly this is they're alleging this is a campaign finance violation, even though the Federal Elections Commission didn't bring an action, even though the DOJ wouldn't bring an action against President Trump. And think of the position that President Trump was in. So if he would have used campaign funds to pay for this non-disclosure, to pay for this, then FEC might have went after him. But he didn't use campaign funds. He used business funds, personal funds, and now the DA's coming. So he can't be wrong on both. When you have that kind of conflict, that in and of itself makes it a federal concern. Not to mention the fact that Alvin Bragg admitted to us when we've had correspondence back and forth with his office, he admitted that they used federal funds as part of the process of indicting President Trump. So we do think there's a federal nexus, and we will have one of our members, frankly, introduce legislation which says if you're going to have local DAs go after people running for president or former president, that is a case that should be removed to federal court, should not be in local state court. So I think we're going to have that legislation introduced this week as well by one of my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee.
A lot of Americans don't have a lot of faith in our judicial system anymore. So when we're looking at Donald Trump facing 136 years, it seems ridiculous, outlandish. It doesn't seem like this could possibly happen. But because of where this is set, because it's in Manhattan, because of this DA, because of the judge, because of the venue, I think a lot of Americans are also concerned that he could end up doing hard time. If that ends up being the case, is there anything that you guys can do to step in? Or is there any legal recourse that the House can take to make sure that this political persecution doesn't go all the way through?
We should have you as a witness because that's all that you just laid out there is why this should be removed to federal court and should not be tried there, why we need this legislation if you're going to have these kind of local DAs bring these type of cases. I hope that it doesn't get to that. I hope this is one of these cases that gets dismissed. Everyone has said there's no case here, even people on the left. Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe said last week when they had the when the indictment was rolled out and they did the arraignment, even Andrew McCabe, no friend of President Trump's, no friend of Republicans, said, well, this wasn't too impressive of a rollout that Alvin Bragg had here. So even when you have even the left saying there's no case there, I think there's obviously no case there. And it again just underscores that this is being done for political purposes. My big fear is they're going to go after him in Georgia. You're going to see him indicted in Georgia. And maybe even the special counsel, Jack Smith, indicts him. And I think that's the scariest thing of all because think about it. If the special counsel goes after President Trump on the classified document issue and doesn't do anything to Joe Biden. Joe Biden, who had classified documents in supposedly now his home in Wilmington, at his beach home in Chinatown, at the Penn Biden Center, had him everywhere. If they go after President Trump and indict him on that issue and not President Biden, I just think that is so unhealthy for our culture. And it's just a scary thing. But I think it underscores, again, just how political we've seen these federal agencies. Understand, in the past 4 weeks, we have learned that the FTC was going to a private company, 13 letters to Elon Musk and Twitter, going to a private company. The first letter after the first Twitter files comes out, the very first question they ask is, who are the journalists you're talking to? Name 4 journalists personally. 2 of those 4 journalists come testify in front of our committee. While they're testifying, Democrat members of Congress asked Mr. Taibbi and Mr. Schellenberger, who are your sources? Direct attack on the First Amendment.
Right.
And while they're asking those kind of ridiculous questions, attacking the First Amendment, guess what's happening? The IRS is knocking on Matt Taibbi's door.
Right.
Now, you talk about intimidation. This is scary stuff going on. And then you couple all that with what happened in Manhattan last week with Alvin Bragg, what we think may happen in Georgia or with Jack Smith. It's a serious time, and it's why the work you're doing to expose all this is so darn important.
Is it fixable? Because that's what most Americans want to know at this point. For the average American out there that's just trying to pay the mortgage, pay the bills, this all seems like a lot of jargon to them, and all they know is that our president is being indicted, he was arraigned, and they don't really know what to make of all of it, other than the fact that they don't have a lot of confidence that this is actually going to turn out in fairness for the president or anybody else. So we're wondering if it's fixable. I know you guys are doing the best you can, but honestly, if you're talking to average Americans and they have lost all their confidence, can you reassure them?
Well, it is. I mean, I always say, look, it's America. It's still the greatest country ever, and made up of all kinds of great people who wake up every day and figure out what's our goal today, how we're going to work hard, how we're going to make good things happen. So yeah, it is. But what we really need is you need the White House. I mean, the way modern American government works is you almost have to have the executive branch control the executive branch, the presidency, to affect real change. And we saw it. It's not just a few years ago, we saw what can happen when you have real leadership in the White House. When President Trump was in the White House and we had amazing economic growth, we were respected around the world. I mean, good things were happening because he got in there and did what he said he was going to do. But right now, we don't have that. So yeah, it can be fixed. Our job is to lay this all out. But really when it matters is who we elect as president. If we get President Trump back in the White House, that's who I'm for, I think we can turn it around. If we don't, then I'm really worried. I really am. So that's why this next year and a half are so darn important.
Speaking of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, we played the clip there. Hunter is right alongside him, traveling on Air Force One to Ireland, probably going to crop up some great business deals for himself. I mean, that would be the precedent that's already been set. But a lot of Americans are wondering, too, this investigation into Hunter Biden, we've seen the facts be laid out by Republicans that, hey, there's a lot of nefarious things going on here. There's a lot of payments being made that are really inexplicable. But where is this investigation going? Do you guys have anything on the horizon that's actually going to maybe get somewhere this time or make the American public realize how serious this could potentially be?
So 3 quick things I say. One is, you see the money, the $3 million to Robertson Walker, and then it gets paid out to Biden's. And the fundamental question is, for what?
Right.
What did they do? What service did they provide? What value did they add?
And continue to provide, because let's not forget, this money is not like it was just a one-time payment.
Right.
It kept coming over the span of about 10 years, and now you've got Hunter on Air Force One going to Ireland with his father.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee is heading up that investigation. Our big concern in the Judiciary Committee is how this all relates to these agencies being turned against the American people, and in particular, how the Biden laptop story was connected with actions of various agencies to suppress that information, keep that information from the American people in the run-up to the 2020 election. So if your viewers haven't read the Twitter files, I would encourage you to read the one that Schellenberger wrote about the Hunter Biden laptop. And in there, he talks about this sworn declaration that Yoel Roth makes as the guy, the head of site integrity at Twitter. And Yoel Roth says, in the run-up to the election, he said he had weekly meetings with the FBI where they talked about a hack and leak operation that was likely to happen in October of 2020 and likely to involve Hunter Biden. So now think about it. They said, here's what's going to happen, here's how it's going to happen, and here's who it's going to involve. And shazam, that's exactly what unfolded. And sort of the fundamental question is, how did they know? I I mean, were these guys clairvoyant? How did they know? And of course, the simple fact is they had the laptop for a year. So they were, as Schellenberger points out, they were pre-bunking the story, the true story that came out, and then they kept that information. When 51 former Intel officials signed that letter, they kept that information from we the people right before the most important election we have. That was election interference. And so that's the angle we have on the Judiciary Committee. Chairman Comer is really looking at what you brought up, Tommy, these suspicious activity reports, these banking records, and they're, as the name would imply, they're suspicious, like the ones that we had, the $3 million to Robinson Walker. So he's going to look at all that. There's more coming. I haven't talked to Mr. Comer in a couple days, but I know that Oversight Committee and staff are working hard on that.
Here's what concerns a lot of average Americans like myself. There's the Hunter Biden laptop, and you talk to a lot of people, and it's like, oh, well, it's just salacious. What does it really matter to me? But then when you look at the possible involvement of our president, and you look at the position we're in with China right now, that's what makes me concerned, because China seems to be running roughshod all over our country. And you wonder, do they have something over this current president? And is he appeasing them so that he doesn't get exposed? That's what we're really concerned about. And how concerned should we be with China's involvement in all of this, especially when it comes to the Biden last name?
Well, you're right, and I think a lot of Americans have that concern. My biggest concern is even broader than that, is just weakness projected from the Oval Office. You had strength in President Trump. I felt we had respect around the world when President Trump was in charge of foreign policy, and his team around him. I shared this example many times, but Mike Pompeo was asked this question probably a little over a year ago when Putin first went into Ukraine. And Mike was doing an interview, and they asked him, they said, Mr. Secretary, would this have happened if Trump were in the White House? And Secretary Pompeo gave a great answer. He said, well, the short answer is I don't know. But I do know this, it didn't happen when President Trump was in the White House. And that sort of says it all, because, again, when you have President Trump and the strength he projected from the Oval Office as commander-in-chief of the greatest country in the world, and you had sharp, intelligent people like Pompeo as Secretary of State, the rest of the world understood it. And then in comes Biden and Blinken. Remember Blinken's first meeting with his Chinese counterpart in Anchorage? The guy from China just lectured, you guys are terrible, you're racist. He gave him all. And Blinken just sat there and took it like a wimp, right? Where there is no way they would have done that in a Trump administration. And if they would have tried, Pompeo would have given it back to him, or more likely he'd have got up, flipped the table over, and walked out. So that's the difference. And that's why this I know we just got through one election, but this next election is so darn important. We have to have President Trump, in my judgment, back in the White House so we can turn things around.
I want to talk about the weaponization of the FBI once again. Now we're finding out they're going after Catholic parishes, and they're going after the church again. So we know that here in Nashville 2 weeks ago there was an assault and an attack on Christianity, but this goes beyond just what happened at that elementary school or that school here in Nashville. This goes to a broader discussion of why are they targeting religious institutions? What can you tell us is going on here, and what should we be concerned about forthcoming?
Yeah, what happened here in Nashville was just tragic. Well, what the FBI is doing, I think it's a sort of a manifestation of that speech Biden gave last fall in front of Independence Hall when he called half the country fascist. This domestic violent extremists, this whole, we've heard from a number of whistleblowers who talk about how there's a focus in the FBI of labeling cases as domestic violence extremism cases. So you had in the Richmond field office, you had folks get together, put together this memo that said the FBI is looking to develop informants, looking to develop sources within the church, even amongst clergy and leadership in the church. Now think about it. Going into Catholic church, like spies and snitches inside of a church, that is such an affront to the First Amendment. And as I read through it, in the footnotes, they talk about the Dobbs decision, and they use the term radical traditional Catholic. What they're really focusing on is pro-life Catholics. I mean, that's about half the people I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District are radical traditional Catholics because they're pro-life Catholic. And actually, it was funny, I was reading through it, and the family I came to mind is Sean and Rachel Duffy. I mean, Sean Duffy, they got 10 kids, they're traditional Catholic, great family. That's who, there's this bias against and labeling them as extremists. It's really scary, but you couple that with what we knew happened a year ago when the memorandum was put out based on what the National School Boards Association treating parents at school board meetings as, we're going to use counterterrorism measures against parents showing up at school board meetings. So if you're a pro-life parent and Catholic, I guess they're coming after you. which is really scary. And again, just underscores how serious this threat to the First Amendment we see from the left is today.
You've got your hands full. And on Monday, you're going to New York because you got your hands full again. Tell me about this field hearing. I know C-SPAN doesn't want to cover it. They don't want to touch it, but it's still very important, actual importance to the people in New York and around the country. What happens on Monday?
Well, we're going up there to talk about this record level of crime we see in every major urban area around the country. And we're going to hear from some victims, a mom who lost a son who was a veteran and was killed there in New York. We're going to hear from some other witnesses. We're going to hear from the guy who was in the convenience store who was attacked and then fought back and killed the guy who was attacking him. And then Alvin Bragg was going to prosecute the guy working in the store, Mr. Alba. So we just want to underscore what's happened when you have these left-wing, many times Soros-supported DAs around the country who think it's more important to let bad guys roam the streets and give very little, don't prosecute them, give them light sentences, than it is to protect communities, protect families, and protect small business owners. When you have rampant crime, it hurts families, it hurts the communities, but it hurts commerce and business and economic growth in these areas, which is harmful to that whole community then. So that's the message we want to talk about, because it's just so harmful in these areas where you don't prosecute bad guys, where you don't put bad guys behind bars who do bad things.
I mean, they can't even have a Whole Foods open in San Francisco anymore because of the problem. So it's real, and I think communities are noticing it. We thought it would help Republicans more in midterms because of the lawlessness, but I don't know if the messaging was correct. I hope leading into 2024, we can put that message forth more and hammer it home more. But the last question I have for you is more of a fun one. I know that you're from Ohio. I'm from South Dakota, so we're Midwest people.
Yep.
Are you a Bud Light drinker, Congressman?
Not now.
Not now.
Not now.
What do you make of this? I know that you guys are so in the weeds of all the legal and the oversight and the judiciary, but I want to know, when you see this going on and Bud Light really taking a nosedive because of all this Dylan Mulvaney stuff, how big do you think the cultural side of everything is going to be in 2024? And it's not something that you guys can legislate, but it's something that's going to be an election issue, and maybe for Republicans an important one. The culture part of this is important now.
It sure is. It sure is. No, I mean, look, most Americans are just regular Americans with common sense. I love the line that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, when we had the State of the Union address, no one remembers much of what Joe Biden said, but the response is usually a tough thing to do. But Governor Sanders, when she came out, she had a great line. She did a great job. And she said, the divide in America today is normal versus crazy. And you can go down the list. It is crazy to defund the police. It is crazy to think boys should compete against girls in sports. It is crazy to think we shouldn't have a border. It is crazy to let a spy balloon, not a balloon, spy balloon, fly across the country, then shoot it down, not shoot it down before, particularly when it's from China. So you can go down the list. It is crazy to do what Bud Light did. And most Americans say, like, that's stupid, that's crazy. I want a beer, I want a brat, I want to watch my team. I don't want this kind of baloney associated with the beer I like to drink. And they're going to drink another beer. Maybe they're going to drink Clay's beer now, which is a great product, or someone else's, but they're not going to drink Bud Light. And I think I saw today they've had a huge loss in value of the company. I forget the number, it was a big number. So yeah, Americans are people of common sense, and they're fed up with the woke baloney they see. That's a good thing.
I think so too. I'm more of a Miller Lite fan myself, so it really doesn't impact me at all. But I like the fact that conservatives are finally giving these liberal companies a taste of their own medicine, because we've never been able to do it before. Our impact as conservatives has never really had a real impact on the bottom line. But maybe now we're finding our power. Let's just hope that's the case.
I agree.
Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing your lovely wife, who is so fantastic, and I love to see her.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoy Nashville. You're going to enjoy it more than New York. I can promise you that.
Thank you. Thank you,
All
Tommy.
right.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you so much.